What breaking the bias means to me is a world where diversity and difference is celebrated and valued. In our world today, women who break down barriers are those who ignore limits.
Breaking the bias to me means creating a safe space for women in all environments.
Breaking the bias to me is allowing women to explore their full potential by letting them enjoy doing anything and everything they're passionate about. I love working in a male-dominated career, and that's my breaking bias.
It means, in my own capacity, speaking up against discrimination and accepting differences and valuing them in our society.
For me, breaking the bias means embracing every single woman as they are. This allows us to nurture and grow authentic women who are ready to change the world.
Giving women the opportunity not just to be heard, but to lead in the spaces that I'm in is how I choose to break the bias.
Putting myself out there and allowing myself to be heard is how I break the bias.
Break the bias for me means security and safety for every woman and girl anywhere at any particular time.
Hi everyone, we're excited to have you join us today and spend International Women's Day with us. My name is Damaris Kongin and I'm the PR and Comms lead at Impact Africa Network, and I'll be one of your co-hosts for today. So today's event is brought to you by Impact Africa Network and some of its partners, which you'll get to know of in just a few. And we host Power to Women conversations, and this is a live cast series where we host global female leaders and change makers with the intent of inspiring a new generation of female leaders in Africa. So just like last year, we've brought to you also a very exciting event, and today we are joined by some very brilliant women who will help us to unpack some of the very timely conversations in regards to the theme of the day, which is breaking the bias. You've seen the intro of the show. You've seen some of the young people just express what this actually means to them. It could mean also differently to you. So also share that with us on our social media channel at Impact Africa Network on Twitter, on LinkedIn. So you can share with us and just express to us how you feel about this particular theme, what today means to you. So today, before we get into it, I'll just like to introduce also my co-host. I'm joined by a very brilliant young lady who is the business development lead at Seamless HQ. So Pili, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for also joining us today and being here. Yeah.
Thank you, Kongin. I am so thrilled. I am so thrilled to be here. I feel like I am in the presence of greatness, which I am, and I cannot wait to get started and to dig in the conversation today. So before we even get into that, I'd love to introduce or just quickly mention some of the partners that we have. And I'll start off by Impact Africa Network, which is a startup studio in Nairobi on a mission to ensure young innovators can access Africa's digital transformation opportunity as creators and owners. Then secondly, we have JENGA School, a computer science professional skills development institution. And then thirdly, we have IHR Solutions, a company that provides talent management solutions and HR services for businesses. And then we also have Seamless HQ, a company that believes that people are an organization's most valuable assets and therefore develops human resource management innovation that helps this organization better unleash the potential of their people. And then lastly, we have IHRM, the professional body of HR practitioners in Kenya, which will actually be awarding 1 CPD point to all the members who will be in attendance tonight. So if you're a member, watch out. Towards the end of the show, we'll be distributing some forms where you'll be required to fill accordingly. All right, so I think now we're good to go. And Kongin, to set the tone of the conversation, I would love to hear from you about what breaking the bias looks like to you.
Okay, most definitely it means very many different things to me. But there's some instances that really stand out to me, that really resonate with me. I think this particular theme for this year, I remember last year's theme was Choose to Challenge, and this year's is now Breaking the Bias. And for us, we've chosen to do that through celebrating women's achievements. That's really the direction we've really leaned towards, because we feel like representation is quite important. So when all the other young women who are also trying to step up into their own roles are able to see what other women are doing, it gives them the courage to also take up space and, just be courageous enough to do it. So I think the theme of today is very timely. But sadly, I just have to highlight this. I feel like we still live in a world where, after all the education, after all the awareness, after all the reforms, we still have to experience some form of bias that is unacceptable, and unacceptable to say the least. I think it would just be wrong for me not to highlight the plight that a young lady experienced last week on Forest Road, Nairobi. I think it was very disheartening for most of us. I can imagine everyone who's on this call might know about this. And I think for me, how I choose to break the bias even against the gender-based violence or gender biases is for me having this platform to be able to create an environment where women can express themselves authentically, and they can express how they've grown, they can express the challenges they've experienced, all the hurdles they've gone through, and being able to help other women get through that in a much better way, or find a direction together. So that for me is how I choose to break the bias, creating an environment where we can have a conversation as women and be authentic and speak truly to what really resonates with us, speak truly to the plights that we go through, and speak also strongly about the achievements we've made, because we were not made to shrink ourselves as women. So I think that really is what breaking the bias means to me, especially today. Yeah. So you can tell me how you also feel about it.
First of all, I agree with you, and I love that. And to me, as cliche as this may sound, it looks like normalizing having more highly skilled, well-deserving women take up space in positions of influence. And that's why I am extremely excited about today's panel, because we have incredible women, trailblazers doing phenomenal things in this country and even beyond. And these ladies need no introduction because their reputation precedes them. Though we'll just still tell you guys a little bit about them so that we can also get to celebrate some of their notable achievements. And allow me at this point to just go ahead and introduce our speakers. And I'll start off with our first guest. She is a partner at Bowman's Colsod Hadi LLP Nairobi and heads the competition practice. She was featured as one of the only 3 women in Africa for her work in the competition space by Global Competitions Review 2021. And in 2016, she was also featured as one of only 2 Bowman's partners. IFLR 1000's Financial and Corporate Guide rated her as a highly regarded lawyer for her work in capital markets, banking, and M&A for 2 consecutive years. That's 2020 and 2021. And for 3 consecutive years prior to that as a rising star from 2016 to 2019. Joyce Karanja, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. We celebrate you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
What are you most excited about, if I could ask?
I think it's always great to have an opportunity to share ideas with like-minded women. And I think this day gives us a very good opportunity to just kind of reflect on how far we've come, because I do think we've made progress, but also to think about, where we need to go and what we need to do to get there. So I think for me, it's just the opportunity for an interesting conversation. I'm very passionate about women and developing women in the workplace. So yeah, I'm just really grateful to be here.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Welcome to the show, Joyce. I think so many people were seeing you on the poster, and I could see such excitement as well. So I'm sure today we're really going to get some really great insights from you. The lady I'm about to introduce is also a powerhouse. We just brought you guys the best of the best. So she was voted one of the leaders in the power list of the top 200 biggest voices in leadership to watch for in 2022. She is also among the 11 inspiring women HR leaders in Kenya, a speaker, trainer, and HR strategist. She is the founder of Women in HR and the HR director at Outsourced HR Solutions Limited. She's passionate about helping her clients learn talent management and leadership strategies that they need to succeed no matter what at the workplace. So I'm going to introduce Dorcas Nderitu, founder of Women in HR. Her titles precede her, her reputation precedes her. Dorcas, thank you so much for joining us today. Just tell us a bit about yourself and what makes you excited to be here today.
So first, thank you very much. I'm humbled with the introduction. I'm actually really thrilled to be here because when you think about it around the world, women make the highest percentage when it comes to the population. So I'm thrilled to be among the leading population, and it's not a gender card, but most importantly, just to talk about our achievements, what we have done, and the impact that we're having. So for me, I'm ready to share, but also ready to learn from the rest, because as I learn, I grow, and as I share, I also help someone else to grow, and that's why I'm here, and I'm really, really excited to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. I love the work that you do over at Women in HR, and I know we'll get to talk a little bit about that. So really looking forward to that. So our next panelist is phenomenal. She is the Director of Strategic Information at UGSF Kenya. She is currently developing, now get this, the protocol for the country's next integrated biobehavioral survey, IBBS, among key populations and overseeing the rollout of HIV recency testing. She is passionate about collecting and disseminating accurate and timely public health information that results in tangible action or response at the individual level. Wanjiru, what an honor. Thank you so much for gracing us. We are so excited to have this conversation with you.
I think you're mute, Wanjiru. Sorry.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Sorry about that technical hitch. Yes, I'm excited to be on this panel. Thank you for the invite. Excited to hear what the panelists have to say, and perhaps learn some new things from other powerful women, influential women, and perhaps from the panel, maybe we can answer some questions that have been lingering and be able to share some ideas on how we can continue to improve the visibility and acceptance, and definitely the utilization of women in the workplace to their maximum potential. So thank you.
So, karibu sana Wanjiru. I think I'm really looking forward to the conversation. This panel is really exciting me. Next up is one of our very close brand partners, and that is a lady from JENGA School. JENGA School is one of our first portfolio startup to span out of Impact Africa Network. And this lady is, she's something else. I'd say she is really, she's actually the very first CEO. I'm not saying first female CEO. She's the first CEO of JENGA School. JENGA School is a computer science professional development institution that offers data science programs and software engineering programs as well. She has amassed a wealth of marketing, communications, corporate, and business development, and has led also time-critical initiatives and developing strategies that have increased a company's market penetration. Prior to being the CEO to JENGA School, Wendy served as the head of growth and marketing for a period of 5 months, guiding the institution to partnerships, which led to an increase in student applications by 131% and enrollment by 50%. Wendy Olwoch, karibu sana to the show. Karibu sana. We're really happy to have one of our own here. Really proud as well, being part of this panel as well. So just say hi to us and how you feel about tonight.
Wow, Damaris, what an introduction. Hello, everyone. As Damaris has already mentioned, my name is Wendell Watch, and I am super excited to be here just to celebrate, applaud, and recognize women's achievements, something I'm quite passionate about. And I'm really looking forward to an insightful session. Yeah.
Wow, Wendy, we celebrate you and all your achievements. Congratulations. Thank you so much for taking the time. Now, finally, our last guest is currently the Vice President of Human Resources at Shock Your Potential. She helped launch a thriving startup, Kukua Bees, and found her passion for leading and developing people to achieve their full potential. She finds joy in developing people through her talent acquisition, talent management, and training skills. Mercy Lepario, we are so thrilled that you're here with us. Karibu sana to the show. I'd love to know what you're most excited about.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's lovely to be here. I'm really honored to be part of this conversation. And I'm excited because I'm going to learn a lot. There's some of the conversation that relate or resonate to all of us. And that's what I want to hear from all these brilliant women and touch that part that we always don't touch, and also to share information that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, and Karibu sana as well. I just love how our panelists span from different fields. So you can be sure that you'll be getting very varied sentiments and perspectives, which I am pretty sure will make for an very interesting conversation. To get right into it, our tagline is say her name, show her face. We believe that part of breaking the bias entails celebrating women's achievements. And I'd like to direct this question to Dorcas and Joyce. First of all, do you feel like we are celebrating women enough? And then why is celebrating women's achievements even important in the first place? Perhaps Dorcas, you could go first.
Okay, so for me, when I'm looking at celebrating women's achievement, I'm looking at some of the things that they have done, but focusing on only one aspect, representation. Who are they representing, on what areas are they representing? And most critical, as I'd mentioned before, we have the highest percentage of population across the whole world as women, and we need to know the strength we have. I think for a very long time, we tend to shun our efforts, and we're timid, all motherly, and we just try to assume that we have done a remarkable job. And for me, celebrating it actually pronounces or just reannounces the fact that we, and I'm not saying it in a bad way, we're the dominant species over here. And when I'm thinking about all the things that women have done across historically up to now, we've really achieved a lot, and celebrating it helps the younger ladies, the young girls, to take up the steps to see what they can do. And especially for those ones who would feel intimidated to take up spaces that are not fully dominated by women, and therefore they feel as if they're not right for that role. So for me, that's why it's really important, the representation bit. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dorcas. I love that representation. What about you, Joyce?
Well, I think Dorcas has said it all, because I do agree. I think it's so important that our children, I think of my daughter in particular, and I want her to grow up seeing women in leadership celebrated. And I would really, for me, the world I would love for her to grow up in is where it's normal, where she doesn't have to sort of worry about, inability or lack of access, or I just want her to believe that, this is the norm. So I think representation is really, really important. And I also think that women's roles in making decisions, in finding solutions to a lot of the challenges we face today, is our voices need to be heard. So it's important that we celebrate those who are filling those gaps and who are actually playing those roles. And I also think it's important to change the narrative. So I think anybody who looks at women and thinks that they're not able or they can't take up, certain positions or do certain things, I think it's important that we celebrate, because that does raise the awareness that women are able. And, anything a man can do, a woman can do better. That's in jest, obviously. And then I'm reminded about when Barack was here in 2015, and he made a comment around, like the world is like a sports center. And imagine if you have a team and you don't let half of the team play. It doesn't make any sense. So for me, I think it's important that, we play our role. Dorcas has mentioned, we are the majority. And, the world is a worse off place if we're just sitting back and not playing our role. So that's why I think it's important to celebrate women.
I love that. A world without bias. Can you picture that? And while you were talking, I was just reminded about a study that I was reading the other day on UNDP gender social norms. And staggering, the data was staggering. It stated that nearly 90% of the world's population of every gender holds some form of bias against women. And now I'm wondering, despite of all the progression and awareness we've had over the years, why do you think gender bias is still prominent? And I'd love to also hear from Wanjiru, Masi, and Wendy as well. Why are we still having this conversation in the 21st century? Perhaps Wanjiru, you could go first.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think that perhaps we could start by saying that not all bias are equal. And not only that, you really cannot get rid of bias. It's something that is innate in you. What is probably important is understanding and the context in which bias happens. So for this particular discussion, we're talking about gender bias, and that bias, I think, let's just when we think about it, or when I think about it, we have to think about the context in which it's happening. And for me, I say the bias really starts at home. So you have your dads and your moms, you have the community and the community around you, your social networks, your environment, and within our social norms and our culture, the women are expected to be a certain way, to have certain jobs, to pursue certain careers. And there's a level of expectation even amongst the girls themselves, amongst their mothers, amongst their fathers. So, and then those moms and dads are the same ones that we have to experience in the workplace. And so if your father is the head of surgery at Aga Khan and he already has a bias against women doctors, of course, he's going to translate that not only to his daughter, but to his environment in the workplace. And so a lot of people want to blame the workplace, but we also have a cultural context in which the bias exists. So that's one of the reasons why I think that it's difficult first, you can't get rid of it, but you can certainly reduce it. And to make it less prominent, I would think that maybe some of the steps that we can take as women is, number one, we have to be able to identify it and call it out when we see it. A lot of us remain silent, you're like, oh, well, that's just the way it is. And it could be very small things. You at a family gathering and somebody says, a girl says, your niece says, hey, I want to be a pilot. And one of the brothers or the uncles or the older cousins say, what? Girls don't do that. And you just laugh it off, and you don't even understand the impact that has made by you nodding your head or remaining silent. It could be that simple. For us that are in leadership, I deal with data for a living. In addition to calling it out, you have to document it. You can say, oh, there's bias in this organization. But until you're there in a director's meeting and you do put up the statistics on a slide and say, hey, we only have 2% women in this organization. Look at this, what's going on? We don't have enough lawyers in the country. We don't have enough, pediatric surgeons in the country that are women. And if that's the true case, that there's not any, is what is this organization going to do about it? So documenting it, speaking up, documenting it, and then also now developing policies, within our organizations, our workplace, that help reduce that kind of bias within the organization. So it's surprising to me that HR is really dominated by women, but then we still have more men in the workplace in higher positions. Those women have a bias. And so a lot of the times we try to blame the men, but it is also us. You're sitting at the hiring table as a hiring manager. You look at a woman and a man, same qualifications, but because it's a contracting position to build roads or put electric poles on the side of, for KPLC on the side of the road, you choose the man, right? And why did you do that? And that's what I mean by, not all biases equal. It's your unconscious bias. It's not explicit, but it is something that is ingrained from the context of your culture, from your experiences, from the norms that you're experiencing, that it just builds up over time, and it's difficult to see it. So unless you call it out and also document it consciously, it can fly by many times, and you won't see it, especially because you're at the top. Right now, you're all women, probably at the top of their game. You're not looking down. You're just looking forward and up, and I feel like that's perhaps why some of the reasons why it's prominent in business, in the workplace, and in environments where we're occupying and working. So, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Wanjiru. I picked so many nuggets from when you're sharing. Call it out, document it, And I'd also love to hear from Mercy and then Wendy as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually listening to 1-0 and I'm like, yes, it should start from the roots. It should start from our generations. It should start from the household. And it should start from us. I mean, probably we can say the generation before us, the bias right now is diluting at some point. Yes, we see some very powerful women taking powerful positions that 10 years ago, they were not in a position to. So actually, this takes me to a story where there was this girl. She's good in mathematics, very, very brilliant. And I asked her, what do you want to be in future? You can be a doctor or engineer. Then she's like, no, I don't want to be engineer. Engineer is for men. I mean, how did she know about that? So those are the things that we need to look at. Where are we breaking in? Where are we starting? So yes, it will take some time. We are not going to eradicate it, but I think some years from now we'll be in equal positions, and bias, especially when it comes to gender bias, will be unspeakable. It will not be something to be mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercy. I agree with you. Some of these stereotypes definitely need to be broken. Wendy.
I completely agree with Mercy and Wanjiru. Pili, for decades, we have seen headlines discussing gender bias in society and the workplace at large. And we have had schemes and various laws to alleviate the issue, but still there are so many barriers that are constant hindrance. I'll take, for example, the tech industry, right? Men are still dominating hugely. I choose to believe this is so because women are less likely to pursue STEM degrees, mostly because they're not aware, just like Mercy had mentioned, but also because they're made to believe that they are gender-sensitive courses. So to me, why is gender bias still prominent? It's because we have not realized that we are still, all of us are actually part of the problem. And it takes all of us to work together and to make sure that we're actually making a difference. Yeah.
Awesome. I think, Wendy, you bring in a very interesting point. I think we've had this conversation before. You being an A student, let's say, you being an A student, being a performer, getting your good grades, wanting to get into your career, and of course, it's the people around you. Either you look at them to get that guidance on what next, because you imagine these are people who've seen what's happening. So you getting the feedback also for yourself, not getting the option to know that there's STEM courses you could pursue. There's this option. So you're limited to only a number of things that seem, it's like you've been put in a box, rather women being put in a box about how far you can go. So I think even having that, I think environment or the culture around you, the people around you, how they also perceive it, and how they guide people up. So I think this is very, very timely, very important. I'm happy we're having this conversation. Happy you guys are sharing sentiments, because it just shows that there are actually sentiments that are very alike. And it means that even the children you're raising are getting to see that other perspective as well. So I think I'm going to dive into, especially in women's regard, you've already brought up the case about women in technology, and it's been something that we have talked about on and on for a while. So I actually have a statistic from the 2020 gender report that states that only 26% of computing related jobs are held by women. And the lack of women representation is also seen in frontier technical roles, including those in emerging sectors within data AI. One would actually think that as this demand for STEM talent rises, that this gender gap would start to at least even out, but this is still not the case. Like, the demand is quite rising, but it's still a matter of we still don't have enough women in tech. So what do you think is attributing to this percentage? What can actually be done to increase this percentage from your perspective, being in a tech space, leading a institution? Just give us.
Okay, did we lose Damaris?
Yes, I think we lost Damaris, but you could just go ahead and answer the.
Right. Great. I think for me, I could talk about this topic the whole day. But Damaris, please, and the rest of the team, I'd like to say, well, the number of women in the industry is reportedly growing each year. It's not growing fast enough. At the current rate, it will be another, let's say, maybe 20 years before the number of women in tech makes up just as much as the number of men. There is an overall lack of encouragement when it comes to girls showing interest in tech-related fields. It's even more apparent that the girls that might have been interested in technical roles aren't aware that it's even an option, because the society is pushing them towards pursuing alternative careers. I'll take my case, for instance. I remember when I finished high school and I was looking for something to do, maybe a career to pursue. I remember going to the university and talking to the course advisors, and I was very passionate about trying something new. I remember them asking me, so Wendy, let's work with your stronghold. What's your stronghold? And I remember saying, my stronghold is math. And that particular course advisor at that particular time told me, great, fantastic. So what you need to do, you just go do business, or you just go do accounting or finance. STEM options weren't something that they gave me, and which was pretty much disappointing. So right now, we are not where we need to be when it comes to attracting women to the tech industry. The path to reduce gender gap starts with all of us by changing our perception of tech. There's so much to tech roles that meets the eye, and I think it's important that young girls and women know that there's a seat for them at the table, that there are successful women in the industry. I know so many of them excelling and finding joy in their careers, and that can be them too, for sure. Over to you, Pili.
Sorry, I was on mute. I really love that we are having this conversation on representation. And remember, a couple of weeks ago, sometime back, we hosted the Senior Director, Head of Innovation at PayPal, Rosita Natwe. And there was a quote that she had mentioned, and I'd just like to quote her. She had said that it's important to break the myths of what a blockchain expert or a digital payments expert looks like. And she urged us to put the pictures, share the stories, and say the names. And it's exactly what you're saying, Wendy. And earlier on, even when we were beginning, Dorcas was talking a lot about representation. And I want us to dig deeper on why representation is so important and how we can ensure that we normalize this, because clearly it's really not the norm. So I'd also love to hear from Dorcas as well. And let's just dig deep on this issue of representation.
So thanks for asking that. I think for me, where I'll start from is the fact that there's always the mix-up or the mismatch that comes in when people talk about representation and the importance of it. And the first misguided identity is we go on the gender card. This is not about trying to just amplify a woman. What we're trying to do when we're looking at representation is the fact that when you're looking at the boardroom, for instance, where everything starts off for a great company, you need representation, you need women there because their input is really important. And when you consider things to do with childcare, healthcare, and when you look at other countries and how far they've reached in regards to healthcare and childcare, it's really critical to see and look at who is the leader. And for me, I'm looking at it this way. As long as there's representation by women from the board up to the lower levels, then you get to hear the voices of the unheard stories of issues they go through, challenges they go through. And remember, we're coming in with the capability, or basically our inborn capability of being maternal. So it will mean what? It will mean we are taking care of everyone. We're not only taking care of our needs, but we're taking care of everyone. And this has been seen even from the different research that UN has done. They always look at how did this organization perform in regards to who was the leader? How did it even outperform because of adding a woman in the board, by having a woman in the C-suite? The goal here is not just to acquire a position up there. The goal here is to try and see, are everyone's needs being heard? Because yes, we can have a woman in the board, we can have them in the C-suite, but it doesn't mean that 100% all our issues will be resolved. It means by being there and taking action, like now what we're doing, would be the right thing to do. But just being there and sitting up, sorry to say, like a duck, will not build up to anything. The most critical thing I would say right now, sitting from an angle of a HR perspective, is how do I ensure that the policies that are in any organization work out to everyone's interest? How do I ensure that I improve the decision making, but also ensure that there is a gender balance in some of these aspects? Because I believe as a HR profession, you are the one leading and guiding careers, or basically the career development of some of these individuals in this organization. How do you have this conversation with this person, and how is the narrative going? Is it that you're stagnating this person and not showing them how far they can grow? Once we get that, somebody will be able to see the importance of having the representation. And even moving from the organization and even into leadership in different countries, the critical thing here we're just trying to focus on is the consideration that women bring in. And for me, that is the most important thing. We don't only look at ourselves. I mean, the last time you went for an event, or you remember last time your mother went for an event, African tradition is the mom always brought something home. It didn't matter what event it was. It didn't matter if she ate. She'd always have something in her pocket to just share with the children. And I'm just looking at it in that way. By having representation at the leadership, that woman is not only thinking about, oh yeah, I need a break this weekend, I need a break next weekend. They're thinking, what about that disabled person? What about that individual who's going under stress and they need support? So you bring in a wealth of investment in terms of decision making. But now the biggest challenge when it comes to representation is when somebody doesn't take action. And Billy, this is where I hand it over to you, because once we start taking action, then we'll be able to see the change and we'll feel the representation taking effect fully. Thank you.
I love that. So once we start taking action, then and only then will we see the change. All right, I love that. And Dorcas, I want to put you on the spot a little bit. I know you are the founder of a community of women, so you are daily interacting with, women. And we've had it said that women are their own worst enemies. So first of all, I would love to know from you. And we talked about we can only work together so that we can achieve this change. So first of all, do you think that this is a myth, or is there some truth to it? And if it has some truth, like how can we change this narrative? And if it's a myth, how can we debunk this myth?
So I looked at this question and I was like, well, it's time to answer it, and I can't throw it under the rug. So I'll tell you for sure it's not a myth, because we're humans. And I think I'll echo out one of the speakers. It should be Wanjiro. She said, unconscious bias. I'll walk into a room, and the first thing first, I'll think of, oh gosh, where will I sit? Which is the right seat? I don't want to sit with those men. They just look, maybe hideous or something. The thing is this, as women, we tend to be our own worst enemies, because sometimes we don't think about ourselves, and not in a way that I'm going to plan a sabotage. No, it is in the bits of, once you get up in leadership, are you thinking of how great this woman is in terms of their performance? And I would like to just read a quote from somebody. He's called Goodson. And he says, women do not create the glass ceiling, the invisible barrier for limiting the ability to earn what they are worth, but they help maintain it. So what are we looking at? We are our own worst enemies because of only one aspect. When we're doing hiring, we are thinking of, oh no, this young man who is in front of me is going to be a great leader. And when I'm looking at a woman, I'm thinking, oh gosh, in 6 months' time, she seems as if she's going to give birth. Is she pregnant? The bit is, we think less of ourselves. We don't see ourselves as super achievers as we are, even when we have facts, even when we have research that has been done that shows continuous improvement of different organizations because of leadership in women. So for me, Pili, the only way we can fight this is very simple. It first change the norms, first understand the different biases that are there that hinder us from sometimes looking and seeing great talent that is ahead of us. And I'll tell you for sure that different research that have been done where a CV for a woman would be put up, and they would just change everything and put a man, and there's a gap in between their career path. And then for a man, it's continuous movement from one organization and they're doing well. And for the man, it's indicated a woman's name. And the bit is, because the man was able to explain, they had to take a break because they were working on a particular project. And when they're asked about the project, they say, no, it was just a personal project, which, well, it did well. I was making a boat, or, I was just doing farming. Well, if it was a woman saying that, there's a high probability would break down that woman in terms of, I don't think she's ready to jump back into the job market. I don't think she is focused. Maybe she's just trying this thing out and she'll go out. So for us, is we put women to prove themselves, which should not be the norm. We should accept them as they come. We should accept them with their talent and their ability. And we should not foresee their past experience as an effort to measure their future expectation in terms of how they'll carry out in terms of leadership. The other aspects that we can come and do or even look at is being a support partner. The fact that, Pili, I know the kind of work you do, I should be able to say your name while you're not there and say, you know what, Pili is such a great moderator and she can take up any conference. It doesn't matter if it's 1,000 people, but we tend to kind of break down and say, you know what, I don't think so. I think she's good, but not that good. So the bit about being our worst enemy is the doubt we create about ourselves as women. Once we overcome this, and it tends to be sometimes a stereotype that is seen more by women, and they're the ones who bring us, we tend to bring ourselves down than men. Men, it's very simple. And I think somebody told me, for every advice a man gives you, they'll charge you. They will charge you. Every advice a lady gives, they'll be like, no, for sure, Pili, I got you. You're my sister. When are we starting to charge? Because once I start to charge you, I won't look at you as a lady. I won't look at you as a woman, but I'll look at you as a great asset that is capable of delivering the kind of work that is expected. So we're moving from, don't look at this person's experience as prove it, but look at it by creating, an even playing field where you'll be able to measure the other gender and you'll see them still achieve and do a remarkable job. Right now, I found myself with an opportunity where I'm working with an organization that is full of women. Well, yes, there's a balance, there's a man somewhere working in a role. But the thing is they're doing such a remarkable role that even when you hear of the kind of work they're doing, you would not believe women are able to take up and do what is expected of them. But the thing is this, as again, going back to Wanjiru, the stereotype in us, even in me, I will doubt. Every day I wake up and I tell my daughter, you know what, you'll be a mathematician, you'll be a doctor, you'll be a pilot. And she says, okay, which one, mom? I say, I always tell her, you'll be everything you want to be. The thing is, I don't want to be the one who created her downfall by creating doubts that she's not able to achieve. But then again, I'm very clear of the fact that there are things that are out there that can harm us and create doubts. And that's why you'll always hear of trainings that talk about self-sabotage about women. You'll never hear, Pili, you'll never hear about men being their own worst enemies. I mean, have you heard that? But when you look at the movies, all the women villains are never loved. But guess what? Every man villain, doesn't matter what that guy did. It doesn't matter. We love him. We're like, I think Simon is the latest guy that is in everyone's mind, the swindler. I mean, that guy destroyed people's life. But what's the thing here? We picture this person because of masculinity and the aspect that they should be able to do that and they can get away with it. And therefore, we create our own worst enemy. So the fact that we're not supporting each other, that's why we have this. The minute we start, and again, I'll go back to the minute we start taking the action and not making women prove themselves, but believe in their capability, then we'll stop being our own worst enemy. Over to you.
Great, Dorcas. I think I've really had a lot from what you're saying. It takes actually a lot of self-awareness. It takes you to actually unpack what is the role you're playing in this thing we are saying. Are you actually one of them? Like right now, I think while you were talking, I was thinking of all the instances where maybe I could have uplifted a woman in my life and I did not. And maybe it's because I really didn't think too hard about it. Maybe I didn't see how role could play in uplifting them or in giving them a chance or an opportunity. And then there's those instances where, of course, maybe Wendy is my friend, so like definitely shout her out, or I'll shout her out in a room full of opportunity. And there's those that maybe you never just sat and thought about the big role that you could have played. So I see a lot of self-awareness as a friend, as a mother, as a co-worker, as just around and your friends, even people who are not your friends, just knowing I saw this somewhere and I think this could really be a thing that Dorcas could do. I saw their work on a certain, that was really good. Let me hit them up and just share this opportunity with them. So I think that's also very, very important. I think I'll go on to another different with this. I'm going to talk about some all of us. And I think all of us have been through before, and it's the fear of change. One of the most reasons why we allow our fear of success to hold us back in an overwhelming is usually an overwhelming fear of change. And they say that that is something that's really constant in life. Change is inevitable. It's probably rumored that once you're changing your career a lot, especially when you're new in your career, you're young and you're jumping from one role to another in just a very short span of time, you find that either you become an attractive prospect because you almost look like you're not, it's like you're jack of all trades, but you're not a master of one, that someone can confidently say, I want to take up Joyce for this thing because they've really spent some time on it. They have the experience. They've done this for a long time. So I think I'll just invite Wanjiru to just tell us, as someone who's really transitioned from in different careers over the years, what are some of the challenges you've experienced in this journey towards discovering your purpose? I just want to know your perspective, how you felt about it. Was the case the same for you? Is this really true, or how do you feel about it?
Thank you, Damaris. I think that it's a double-edged sword. So, most of us get into our careers when we're 20 or something like that, 20, 23, 24. And from my experience, a lot of people don't know what they really want to do at that age. And so the hopping around of jobs and careers is common. And I think it takes a mature HR person to be able to understand the behavior of humans. And I think that's some of the things that some of our HR managers lack is understanding behavioral science and how people behave in different phases of their lives. So if you're trying to get an intern or entry person, usually they think they know what they want to do, and you may get lucky. You may get somebody who really knows what they want to do, and they stay with a company 3, 5 years, 10 years. But at that age, a lot of people don't know what they want to do. In fact, most of us come into ourselves in our 30s, and maybe even others in our 40s. So I would say the 20s should be a time that people do experiment, because you know, once you hang on to something, sometimes it's difficult to let go and move on. And in my experience, in my 20s, I did do that. I went through different career moves, 2 years at a time, 1 year at a time. And then finally, going into my 30s, I kind of decided, well, I've always wanted to do, while I was in college, I always wanted to go into public health. And so I went back to school to do that. And, there is a cost to it. It's not free. And there is some risk to it. And, some of the costs are actually, money, when you have to go back to school, whether you have to use your savings or take out loans or ask your parents to pay, it costs money. It's gonna cost you time lost. You've lost, maybe you've been jumping around for 3 to 5 years. You go back to your parents and you're like, hey, I think I want to change my career. A lot of them will probably close the door. Others might be sympathetic and pay for that second degree. And so you have time lost. You're going back to school. You're the oldest in your class. Everybody's in their 20s. You're hitting 30 and all that. So that might affect you psychologically. You might be anxious about the change. You might get peer pressure from the family. You're going through a crisis. There's a lot of things that happen when you're trying to make such changes and such moves. Sometimes it's not a drastic change, so it doesn't really matter. People will probably not experience that transition. And sometimes within their organization, that transition is possible or is acceptable. I've seen people who started out as lawyers transition into accounting and move into, tax law to tax accounting. So sometimes that can be simplest and it's acceptable within the grand scheme of things you're doing. You have, I have a lot of doctors who don't like to practice anymore, or they started practice and they hated having to see patients and have moved to public health. So they go and get their master's in public health or their PhD and they come into the public health arena. So sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's difficult. But I would say for anybody who's willing to transition or really wants to transition, you really have to know why. And because if you don't know why, you're likely to get yourself in a situation where halfway through you're backing in or backing out or just confused, or you just get, flip-flopped by the wind or, the way the waves blow. And you can lose a lot of time and energy doing that, and money and so forth. The other thing that you actually need to research what you're getting yourself into, what you would want it to look like. You probably want to talk to people in that field to see what they do, how wide that scope of environment is, how deep it goes, what your options are, and so forth. I also say you have to create a very good support system. A lot of times if the change comes when you have a family, you have 2 kids, 3 kids, a husband or a partner, whatever the case is, and you're telling them, hey, I need to go back to school. And at that point in time, if you're mid-career, you're the one maybe paying the mortgage or, the car payments or school fees, and so somebody else has to take up that slack. Sometimes, you're lucky if you get night school, but even if you get night school, maybe you compromise your family time, homework time, dropping off the kids at school, whatever the case is, you're going to need a support system to get you through that. Whether it's your partner or your family or your friends, or your mentors to get you through that. And once you get through that transition, I think what people are not prepared to do is to fail. there is a good chance that you will fail in the next transition. And the question is, if you fail, will you keep getting back up again? And will you continue at it because you know your why? Or will you make adjustments so that you can make it work? Sometimes it can be very difficult. You thought it was one thing, you landed there was a different thing. And I would say, just like any career, if you're graduating now with a new degree, be ready to start from the bottom. Be able to do the grind in your 30s and 40s that you should have done in your 20s for that same career, for that same business, for that same consultation, for that same NGO that you start, or CBO, whatever it is that you're starting. Again, you have to be able to experience some failures and experience some grind work. And you know, I remember when I made a transition, I took a 80% cut to switch back from the finance world to public health world, and to get back to the salary that I was at when I left the finance world. It took me almost 10 years. So you can imagine 80% cut, and then another 10 years before you actually go at par with where you were when you left. But my why was important, and I had a support system, and maybe the grind was the failure, like seeing my first job offer a salary and just like going into shock and wondering, what am I going to do with this kind of money? Like, really? So we had to make some changes, go from 5-bedroom house into a 1-bedroom apartment. I mean, and you know, change our lifestyle. No vacations, you know, all that stuff that we were so used to doing. We had to make those changes. And then in 2 years, I think I was at 50%. So that also helped, but I knew where I was going at that point in time. And you know, finally, the comment around being a jack of all trades and a master of none. There are some careers that allow for being a jack of all trades, and there's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes that has to do with your personality, in terms of being able to grasp things, many things at once, and being able to do them relatively well. And a lot of managers are really like that. A lot of, I would say, mid-level management is like that. They're able to juggle many things, understand many things, and see how the pieces fit. And great leaders are also like that as well. But there's also room for masters of something. And those masters, usually, if you even look at statistics, usually when the organization, they're the pin, when you pull them out, something big falls apart. And so I always tell those that I mentor is like, it's good to know everything, but I prefer to be good at generally everything, but to be really, really great at something, such that if you pull me out of the project, it's probably going to fall apart, or it will take you a while to get it figured out. And the same applies to many careers, you know. Even lawyers, they have to, if you go and meet a Kenyan guy or a Kenyan woman who tells you they're a lawyer, and then they say, oh, so what kind of law do you practice? They say, oh, I do everything. Usually I walk away from that person because I'm like, really, you can't do everything that well. So you want a family lawyer, you want to go to a family lawyer. Even the doctors, the same thing. And the same thing applies to, you know, an engineer or construction worker. You know, they specialize in brickwork, they specialize in, you know, a foundation, or, you know, superstructures and so forth. So I think that is something that we have to be careful about. Most cultures, in terms of societies, they thrive when you have good amount of generalists, but you also need a solid amount of specialists in whatever it is. Even just going to get my hair done, there's somebody who's going to do lines and they don't do the other thing. But if they're really great at lines, somebody stays in line and waits for them for 4 hours, because that's the only person who you want to do your lines. And they will charge a premium for that. And that's something that we should encourage. But also there is room for jack of all trades, because that person, when you're in a hurry and you just need a wash and go, they do everything. They will do your wash and go and blow dry, and you're on your merry way. So there's room for everybody in this. I think it's people understanding their niche and their talent, and also their interests. But in terms of change, I think that it's important to know, I guess you have to start with a why and be ready with some of the things that I mentioned earlier today. So I'll pause there. Perhaps others can contribute to that discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wanjiru. I think you bring a very interesting point, especially about, okay, everyone's journey is different and you can't expect everyone to fall in love with the first thing they do in that first instance and ride with it. So it might take a lot of you getting into so many things before you actually realize, I'm actually at my happiest doing this particular thing. And I think for me, I'd say I see that in the startup scene, because that's what we are doing right now. And so you realize you get involved in so many things, and you find yourself particularly drawn to others than others. So it helps you to also just discover who you are, your best talents, how can you best present yourselves. And I think it's important when you say this journey will actually come with failures, it's really part of it. And it takes a lot of also adjusting, having the right people on the team. I think I love that you also about doing your research, taking your time, and actually networking to just see what's also happening across the board with other people. And it will help you to also just influence your decisions and you getting on the right track for your own personal journey. So thank you so much for that sentiment. I think we'll just take a short break right now. Thank you so much for the contribution so far. You can interact on the chat, and you can start sending in your questions, anything that you've had that you still want about. Just share it on the comment section and we'll be able to share it with our guests. And don't forget to also we're going to watch a very brief video. Today's highlight, of course, is celebrating women's achievement. And so we can't end the show without having to, see some of the things that women to, especially around women, that we can resonate with. So yeah, we'll get into that and see you after the break.
Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. Thank you so much, video team, for that amazing video. I loved it. For this next section, I'd like to put a spotlight on Joyce Karanja. And my question is on, for high-ranking roles, and I know you've risen through the ranks, so you might have a bit of experience in this. So we still experience instances where a male CEO is simply referred to as a CEO. But for women, we still see the tag female CEO, female pilot, and the like. So in your view, is this part of the gender bias? And does this demonstrate that it's almost unnatural to have women taking up that space? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you. I think it certainly is it does show a gender bias. It suggests that the CEO role belongs to men rather than women. And I think it's important. I think it's Wanjuro who said earlier about calling out behavior that is biased. I think it would be important in that scenario for that female CEO to call out the behavior. And I think how you call out is really dependent on, your personality and how you interact with people. But from my perspective, I think, it should be done in a diplomatic way that's non-confrontational, that also seeks to preserve, the goodwill of the relationship. So maybe using a bit of humor to pass the message across, or to maybe pull the person aside and say, actually, I don't appreciate, the bias that you're clearly exhibiting in feeling the need to refer to me as a female CEO. I was on a session yesterday in honor of International Women's Day, and one of the speakers made the point that it's not our job to make men feel comfortable, but it's important to call out any biased behavior without necessarily maximizing the discomfort. And I think it's Dorcas who said that women are generally innately, gentler in how we approach things. So I think that's how I would approach that scenario. I would sort of just try and communicate in a diplomatic way that preserves the relationship.
Lovely. I loved how you talked about how we can learn some of these biases. And we cannot have a conversation around celebrating women and empowering them without addressing the role that men play in this. So we've had numerous successful women attributing their success to the men in their lives, workplace and circles in general. Would you say that we are there yet in regard to having enough men at the workplace rooting for women, speaking against gender bias? Do you feel, maybe you can also share from your personal perspective, did you feel rooted for, like as you were rising through the ranks? Maybe you could also share a bit about your story.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is actually very personal because I attribute a lot of my success and my growth in my career to a particular boss who was a man. And at the time, I didn't even know the terminology, sponsor. But now, of course, with the wisdom of hindsight, that's what he was. He basically was the boss who saw something in me, who invested in me. And a lot of, like, for legal practice, your experience really comes from doing and doing the most complex work, the most interesting work, the best deals. And he really sort of, held my hand and put me in those type of rooms, in those type of transactions, which really built my competence and prepared me for my career progression. And it's, he played a critical role again, because we can't ignore the fact that, the table where decisions are made are largely made up of men. And so you do need a sponsor, and you do need men to pull their weight to represent you and to speak on your behalf. I think it's Dorcas who said, about sort of, promoting each other and calling out ability where you see it, and lifting each other as we climb. And I think it's true what Dorcas said. I think men generally do that better than women, and that was my personal experience. So I think it's critical that men participate in this conversation, and that they also play their role, right? I think you've asked whether we have sort of, do we have enough men in the workplace playing this role? And I think we have come a very long way, but I don't think we're there quite yet. I think, again, from a business perspective, and I think this is how men are very sort of numbers driven. And I think from a business perspective, it makes good business sense for men to participate in this conversation. If I use the legal world, for example, so in my experience, a lot of the times when we're recruiting young lawyers to join, as pupils for training and what have you, more often than not, majority of those who are very, very talented are women. And there are many years, in fact, there have been a number of years in the past where we've actually had to do reverse affirmative action to reserve spots for some good gentlemen, because the women are, by and large, they're the strongest candidates. But of course, once they join the firm and you invest in them and they go through the ranks, at some point in their career, they have to make this very difficult choice between, their personal and domestic responsibilities. Often motherhood comes into play. And of course, the pressure of practicing in a law firm, because of course, it's a very high pressure, intense environment. And many times we lose women because they choose, their personal responsibilities over their careers. So sitting from an employer's perspective, it doesn't make good business sense to not actually address the issue, because why would we spend all that time, money, and effort investing in training these very able young ladies only to lose them halfway through? So I think, speaking to men in a way they understand, I think the numbers just make sense that they have to be participating in this conversation. And then I think it's also worthwhile to note that oftentimes, and I've seen this in my own workplace. I think generally we're a workplace that does a lot to try and address the bias. And I do give credit to the men who I work with, because I do think they do try to exhibit and to support women in the workplace. But I found that oftentimes they have either a blind spot or just are a bit clueless on how to go about actually giving support that is meaningful and that goes a long way. So I think women have a role to play in sort of communicating better. So if I give an example, and this happened in a law firm in London. So a young lady who was a senior associate, which is sort of in the hierarchy of a law firm, that's the level just before a partner. So she went away on maternity leave and had her baby. And then when she came back to work, she worked in a team that was a mix, but her boss was actually a man. And when she came back, suddenly she wasn't being involved in the heavy lifting of transactions. She was kind of being given, lightweight work, and she kind of felt like she was on the periphery of what was happening. So, after sort of watching this for a few months, she realized maybe this guy is trying to send me a message that, I have no future here. So she resigned and left and went and joined another law firm. And then, after sort of a few months, her old boss called her and said, let's have a coffee, let's have a conversation. And when they sat down together, her old boss expressed his perspective of what he was doing. And he was saying, because you're a young mother who's just come back to work, I thought I should give you the lightweight so that you're able to transition back into work, so that you have time for your child, you can leave early and what have you. Whereas this young lady read that as if this guy was basically saying, I don't think you have the ability, I don't think you have a future here. And so she left. So, you can see that the boss in that scenario he was well-intentioned, but that was misconstrued, or perhaps it wasn't the specific support that this lady in particular needed. And I think a conversation would have saved the day, right? So I think also what's clear to me is that there isn't sort of a one-size-fits-all solution that, what this support looks like or what the perfect environment looks like. So I think it's an ongoing conversation that needs to be had. I think women could do better at communicating how that support looks and how that support would go the longest way to make their work environment work for them. So I think we have a long way. I think we've come a long way, and I think we have a long way still to go, but I'm encouraged because I can see the fruits of the work that we have done so far. And I'll stop there and hand back to you.
Thank you so much for that, Joyce. I think I totally agree with you. The way you insist on it being a two-way, it's a two-way thing where everyone has to take up the responsibility in the part they play in this. So I really appreciate that point. I think even in my environment, you can see people who are really trying to be conscious of how they interact with women in the workspace. If they notice that they are doing something in the wrong direction, very quick to correct it. So you can tell that there's been that awareness and things are moving quite in the right direction. So we are heading there, not there yet, but clearly if we keep going, we will get where we need to be. And the generation that comes up will totally enjoy the fruits of what we are doing right now. I am going to introduce something a bit different. So ever since the pandemic hit, we've all witnessed some major shifts in the way of life. And one that's really, really major that we've all experienced is the shift to remote working. And so this is probably something that is a conversation so many women are having with each other, or even in just the spaces they're in. Right now, you could realize that there's also been a really huge, there's been the great resignation era. And when you look at the numbers, the number of women is actually higher, citing, and what they're actually citing this great resignation too is mental health and childcare limitations as the hugest contributors to these great resignations. So I'm going to address this to Mercy, because you've had experience helping talent to just get settled in the remote working kind of setting. So you've been able, I'm sure, to just hear the experiences that people are having, and you've been able to even do the research and understand some of these struggles and how they can be navigated. So maybe just share with us what struggles that women are really facing right now in this shift to remote working. Is this mental load real, or is it just another buzzword?
Okay, thank you, Damaris, for
Mercy,
that.
maybe we
So,
can hear you.
can you hear me now? Hello? Okay. So, thank you so much for that. Unless there's something technically going on. Okay, so we can say since the pandemic and remote employment has become like the new norm, but not just basically for me, I started working remotely, I think 6 years ago, and it's been a challenge. You can say it's a blessing, and it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, depending on how you take it. So yes, there have been struggles going on. I mean, as remote, and I'm sure during the pandemic, most of you experienced, where as a woman, especially when you're a mother and you have toddlers who are running up and down, and you don't have like a space to work in, what does it feel like? The struggle, between deliverables and also between, meeting the targets and also giving the attention to the family. So yeah, those struggles are real. They're there with us, and we have been struggling with them. So you find yourself in that tough choice in between, struggling between your work and also the task that you are supposed to be salaried. So you are in between a family relation and also household work and also the tasks that are there on the table. As a mother, you come in between the tough choice or which one to go first. Does my son need attention, or do I need to attend to a Zoom call? So there are those choices that you have to make in between, which is really tough, because at the end of the day, you have to make one. And apart from that, there's also the struggle of the conditions. When pandemic came in, it came in just like a bomb dropped. Everything was shut down, not going to the office and all that. So here you come, you're supposed to work from home, your salary is cut 50%, you don't know what to do. Is it moving from another house, which is more smaller than the one that you're living, or is it trying to make the house, trying to accommodate your expenses at that time? And there's that. Now you have to go back to the condition, like you are not used to your desk, you need to deliver, but then you don't have a desk, you don't have an office. So what are those? What are you going to do? So there's that factor where you have to look at, the optimum conditions which you have to provide for yourself. So those are the struggles. Yes, you can say like, okay, yes, I got a place, I can work, I have an office, but then it comes to a time where you have a Zoom call going on, or with a crucial client or from the organization, and then your neighbor just starts drilling or doing constructions, or the kids start crying or needing your attention, or something is burning in the kitchen. And those are the struggles that we go as mothers when working remotely. I know for our counterparts gender, it's totally different, because they focus more on professional. They can go book a hotel somewhere and do something. Yes, you can say like we can do the same, but at the end of the day, we still have to get back to the tough choices. And also another thing that working remotely has contributed in is the struggle. Also, we struggle in is the career growth. When we come to that career growth, when you were in the office, it was totally different. I mean, you can be able to have these courses coming in and out, but here you have to plan in between the time of spending or doing homework with your son or your daughter, or doing a course that you are maybe scheduled to, or a class that you are scheduled to. So we come back to that, like as a mother, where back to the tough choices that we have to make, and to balance in between work-life balance. And the worst of it is the loneliness. That means like it's really lonely. It's a lonely journey. That you are alone. You are with your computer the whole day. The only people that you interact with is your family. The tea room chats are gone. The lunch break gossips are gone. Where you can vent about projects are gone. So you're stuck there, and you just have no one to talk to. And that's now where we come back to your question, the second question, which is a mental load real, or is it just a buzzword? But true is that's not debatable. It is real. It is real because of the loneliness that you face as a remote working person, and it comes in, and you breathe in and out, and you take another day. But so far, I can say it depends on how you take, either blessing or a curse. If it is a blessing, then that means you spend time with your family. If it is a curse, then that means you don't deliver to your boss, because also your employer needs the 40 or 30 hours that you have agreed to deliver within the week, but that's something that you cannot provide at that time. And other people, I think, during this era, that like the great resignation, people who said enough is enough. Let me focus on my family. Family is more important, because they come and realize, like, I was not giving the time that I was supposed to do with my family, and the work is taking time from my family. So yes, for mothers, it's a struggle, but at the same time, there are measures which, as leaders and as employers, we can put in so to ease that pain. Thank you so much, or to ease that burden. Thank you so much, Damaris.
Okay, I think you've really talked about a lot of realities which so many of the women are actually experiencing, weighing down on their mental health. I think I just want to know how could people navigate just this journey better, and what can really help them to navigate it in a much easier way that at least takes off a bit of this mental load, so that they can actually focus on both taking care of their families and doing a great job at work.
Okay, thank you for that. So this one, I'm going to speak it out of experience, because I started with a small group, small team members, and we are growing up. And most of our team members, we are like 21, and all of them are working remotely. It's been since 2016. So with time in, okay, yes, there's that career shift. So as Zero said, I shifted from my career from a different part to now HR, and that's where, and I took whatever I was experiencing during my remote employment as an employee to help others at least grow. So there's some measures we put in as leaders, as I say. There's the fact, like, the SOPs that we give in as a leader or as HR should be related to remote working. That's a structured one that guides them, not just the normal SOP that relates to work, but rather the SOP that relates to their normal. It goes back to their house, everything on how they are going to handle everything. So SOP totally should be tailored to remote employees. So that's one of the things that you make it easy, and you make it about. Once someone has that SOP, then it's become easy for them to plan, to have that structure, and to know what is expected with them, so that it doesn't bring frustrations and confusion and miscommunication. Another thing is frequent communication. That's another thing that eases the burden, as you know, the support things that we should put. And that's when I say communication doesn't mean like calling today and saying, hi, how is work? You're supposed to finish this task or something like that. No, it is supposed to be more beyond going the normal task communication, going beyond like asking, how is your family? And that's, I'm speaking in a place or in the seat of a leader or HR, and asking, how is your family? How is your pet? How is your grandmother? How is your boyfriend? And all that. Just go beyond the normal communication. And when it comes to remote employment, there is never over communication. Communicate. You can call in the morning, in the evening, and this helps, let's say, mothers, especially those who are struggling, to be able to know, like, you are not just a leader, you are someone who cares about them, and that's also I mean, enables their productivity and also their performance. So those communication are the things that you, as a leader, you should never leave. Another thing is providing the equipment. When you come to equipment like a desk, monitor, do that to make it easy for them, and also make sure the tools that we have available for us, that means like Asana, Slacks, are things that someone knows how to use them, the collaboration tool, and just taking through like the training on how to use that. So it becomes easy for them to divide in between the chamas messages in WhatsApp and the work messages, which are from Yammer or Slack or Slack or I mean or Asana. So another thing is just make use of the you as a leader, just be vulnerable to your employee. Give that open up, tell them what energizes you, and also what makes your day. For me, what actually personally do is meditation or workout. So that's what you open up, and you tell them, if this is what actually, find what energizes you, focus on that. Remote work can be lonely, and also it can be like it can bring mental problem when you're working alone. Okay, so I'm going to wind up there. If you have any questions, I still have some more pointers on it. So you're welcome to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy. I love that you shared practical steps and those little nuggets. So I see we've unfortunately run out of time, and I can see a couple of questions on the chat. I love that we have a lot of men engaging in this conversation. I see you in the comment section, so thank you for joining in. So I think I'll just pick 2 or 3 questions, and then we'll call it a night. And this one is specifically directed to Wendy. She says, I have a question for Wendy. I would like to transition into tech. What advice would you give to younger women like myself just entering the tech workforce today?
Fantastic question. Pili, is there a name to the question? So at least I know who I'm addressing it to. If there's no name, that's fine. So to this amazing human being, I'll say technology is the ultimate portable career. There has never been a better time to be a part of the tech ecosystem. You're in the right place at the right time, and tech is definitely a good place to make your ideas happen. Something else that I'll just add, or rather advise you to do, is there's this amazing book that's called Nice Girls Don't Usually Get the Corner Office, and this is by Lois Frankel, if I'm not wrong. And it basically entails the unconscious mistakes women make that sabotage their career. So especially during this transition, I'd advise you to read that book to really help, as well as join JENGA School for sure. We'll help you with the transition to tech for sure. Yeah. Back to you, Pili.
Thank you, Mercy. Wendy. Then we also have one question from Richard. He asks, how does one create a valuable network? So I'd love for Dorcas to answer that as well.
Thank you for the question. I think the easiest way to say this is, when you're thinking about creating a network, what is it in for the rest of the people? Because for it to be valuable, it can't be all about you. It has to be about everyone else. As long as you're willing to identify a particular subject that is on need or a particular segment that really requires that support, I would say that's the first step. Second step is very simple. Make sure you're willing to give enough information and to be there for the members as much as you can. Because one thing I've learned since the time we started Women in HR, the thing is this, people will always have queries. They'll have queries about, should I go for this interview? They'll have queries of, am I doing the right thing? Does this document look right? As basic as it is, the thing is this, are you willing to support and carry them and build them up to be able to support other people? It has to be a win-win strategy. And for me, what I've learned is there's a lot of content out there that everyone can use. The most amazing thing I can say is since we started Women in HR is we have had people coming by us and saying, we want to partner with you because we want to support you in what you're doing. But also at the same time, we have told them we're also willing to support you and give you as much as we can in terms of talent and advice. So the thing is, if it's not a win-win, there's no need of setting up that network. If you're not ready to give out, you're not ready to support the members, it's not going to help anyone. So the most critical bit would be just focus on those two areas and you'll be able to find your landing path. And then the final bit I think I would say is make sure that it is as simple as possible to join. Women in HR, we don't charge to join. We embrace the women who come in because they come in all facets of life. They come from graduation, they come at levels of director. But the most critical, important thing is we are all exchanging information, learning from each other, and growing each other. And as long as there is a standard guiding objective that has been created, I believe that network will be great. And thank you for your question. Over to you, Pili.
Awesome. Well said. We have a very interesting question here by Clinton. He says, there are very able women out there, no doubt. However, some of the men's success has been attributed to character traits. For example, men are said to be slightly more aggressive and less agreeable. So do you think women acquiring these traits can help in balancing the gender in the workplace? I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, Joyce.
Yeah, I mean, maybe my thoughts are a bit radical, but I think it's true. I think our innate traits as men and women sometimes lend themselves better to certain career paths than others. So, for example, if you're a litigator, perhaps being an aggressive man is a strong trait, whereas being a doctor, I don't know, a pediatrician, maybe it's nicer if you're empathetic and soft and a woman. But I think the short answer to Clinton's question, I think for me is, I think you have to be authentic in your leadership style. And I think for me personally, that means that if I'm not aggressive by nature and if I'm not, rude and abrasive, then that's not going to be me acting authentically as a leader. And so I think that's part of the bias we need to address. I think we have to accept that, leadership styles are different and you bring yourself as you are. And given the space, maybe you might find actually coming in and being a soft, empathetic, communicative woman achieves similar or better results just because you're bringing your best self to the table. So I guess my short answer is I don't think so. I think I'm a huge believer in authentic leadership and really bringing the best version of yourself to your role.
Oh, I love that. And it's actually, what Damaris had talked about earlier, authenticity, like a space where we can be authentic. So I love that you mentioned that. So final question. Question here for Wanjiro. Would love to hear about handling finances, especially with a partner. 50-50 or not? Now that you're talking about gender equality.
Look, I think that's a completely different conference call today. Probably requires a marriage counselor. And I'm not even sure that I'm equipped to answer Clinton's question, but I will say what I personally believe. Maybe I think for this one is there's a saying that says different strokes for different folk. But if you're talking about a partner in terms of marriage, your personal partner, I don't believe in 50-50. I do believe, however, that there has to be transparency in finances. And each family unit should decide how they're going to spend the money together. There should be a set of rules how that money is spent, and there should be allowance for personal expenditure that's separate. So in summary, you should be able to disclose how much you make. You should be able to put it in a bucket, one account, whether it's 80% of your salary and you remain with 20%, and 20% you do what you want to do, and the 80 that both of you have each contributed goes towards buying property, building houses, school fees, everything. So it doesn't really matter who brought it in. You're just contributing a proportion of what it is that you have earned. Now, in my marriage counseling class, they said, that was many years ago, that majority of divorces happen because of finances. So I'll leave you that with a parting shot, and hopefully you can research a little bit more about this with somebody who's way more qualified than me to discuss this subject. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wanjiru, for that perspective. And to our audience, of course, for just being so amazing, engaging with our speakers, and it just shows that you guys have been also following and enjoying the conversation. It's so sad that we have to leave. That has really just been our time. I can't imagine where the time went, because you're already 6 minutes past. But this has really, really been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, and also for our panelists for showing up on this very day to offer such great insights and have such authentic conversations with us. I'll just wind up by saying the show is brought to you by Impact Africa Network and some of our other partners as well. And we hope that you've also enjoyed spending your International Women's Day with us. We hope you've left here feeling more empowered as a woman. You feel like you have a better sense of direction in some of the aspects of your life. We tried to make the show as diverse as possible. So we thank you so much, and hope to see you next time when we have more of these ladies around, and even when they say yes to coming back once again. So thank you so much. That has been my time. Pili, if you can just also say goodbye to our audience, and then you can wind up.
Thank you so much for engaging us. To our lovely panelists, we wouldn't have done it without you. So asanteni sana, and to our partners as well. So again, we'll be distributing our form. If you're a member of IHRM, remember to fill it in accordingly. Otherwise, it's been so much fun. Let's do this again sometime soon. Have a lovely evening.
Have a good night, guys.
I don't think you get celebrated enough. You should be celebrated for every aspect of your growth and your growing pains. You should be celebrated for your creativity, for your fearlessness, for your persistence and determination. You should be celebrated for all the effort that you put into building your future.